Hey everyone, Adam here, So Wizard Podcast. I have an interview for you today. I've been sitting on this interview for a little while. I did it, maybe a month ago at this point. But the movie Demigod is coming out tomorrow at the time this is posting, October 15th. There was already a review for Demigod a few days ago on the channel, so make sure you check that out. But I wanted to release the interview and the review pretty close together, but also close to the movie launching, so it's fresh in your mind, because this was a really good one. I think you should check it out. So I got to sit down with writer, director, actor Miles Doleac. He made Demigod, as I just said, beginning to end. He did make it in COVID, but it never comes across as working around insane parameters. It's a very ambitious movie, especially for one of these micro-budget indies, that it takes place in the German Black Forest, which he talks about in the interview. There's a standard. They didn't fly everyone to Germany, unfortunately, but it's got a great cast, great acting, cool story. It does have some horror elements you've seen before, but I think horror as a genre relies on those staples a little bit more than some other genres. Maybe not all of them, but it does a lot right, and it's very well shot and looks great. And now I'm just reviewing the movie again, even though I already did that. So enjoy the interview with Miles, and I'll shut my mouth. Hey everyone, Adam here, So Wizard Podcast. I'm sitting down with Miles Doleac to talk about his newest movie, Demigod. How you doing, Miles?
I'm well, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
Before we get to Demigod, I always like to ask creative people to kind of go back to the beginning of their creative journey and talk about their spark, what got them started, and kind of the journey so far.
Sure. I've been in love with movies since I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark in 1981 at the old Hardy Street Cinema in my hometown of Hattiesburg, Mississippi. I knew at that moment I had to be part of this world. I knew that I had to create these little pieces of magic that transported me and hopefully do the same for others. And so at a very early age, I became involved in community theater in my hometown. I was fortunate that my high school had a thriving drama program, and we got to travel to drama festivals and debate tournaments, speech and debate tournaments all over the country, which was a really great experience for a young kid growing up in the deepest part of the Deep South to travel to other places, far-flung places, from Fargo, North Dakota to Boston, Massachusetts, and others, and experience other perspectives and people and cultures and places. And it was a really mind-expanding type experience for a young kid growing up in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. I attended the North Carolina School of the Arts in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, in the drama program there, which was under the leadership of the late Gerald Friedman, who'd done a wonderful job building that program. So all of this was, at the time, acting was my entire focus. After graduation, moved to New York, did some off, times 10 plays in New York. Ultimately wound up in LA, doing a lot of auditioning and not booking anything, mostly working in food service, as a cater waiter and a barista at Starbucks and you name it. I actually wound up catering the Governor's Ball of the Academy Awards one year, which is kind of what LA is about. It's what it's like oftentimes, where you're like this close to it, but you just can't get your foot in the door. It's all around you swirling like this tornadic flurry of activity, but you just can't make it happen. And then you're serving Tom Hanks pizza or whatever at the Governor's Ball. So at that time, I'd done some small things here and there. I'd done enough to get my union card. I'd been on some soaps and in some very small things. But I just wasn't breaking through. So I started taking some classes at UCLA, some history courses, which really engaged me. I had always been fascinated with history, the ancient world in particular, or ancient religion in particular, and was sort of on the verge of giving it up. If I hadn't fully decided to give it up, I was pretty darn close. And I wound up going to graduate school, and long circuitous story made short, wound up in New Orleans, the great city of New Orleans, getting my PhD at Tulane University in the wake of Hurricane Katrina. So the other thing that happened in New Orleans at that time, in South Louisiana at that time, is there was this big production boom. Hollywood invested in Southeast Louisiana and New Orleans, Baton Rouge in particular. And I started getting opportunities. I did some wonderful independent films. I did some TV stuff, Breakout Kings on A&E, Treme on HBO. And suddenly whereas in LA, I was running up against this wall, it seemed like these opportunities were spreading out before me. But what really inspired me was the independent filmmakers that I was working with at the time, people like Mike Mayhall and Dustin Shooter, and seeing them making their own stuff, making their own scripts, not waiting on somebody else to open the door for them, but kicking the damn door in and taking their destiny by the reins. And I said, man, I could do this. I could be doing this. I could be telling my own stories. I could be writing roles for myself. And my experience at that time was academia, and which has its own share of complications and problems and conflicts, that were rife with dramatic possibility. And so I wrote a script called The Historian, which was loosely based on my experience and people I knew's experience in higher education, both as members of faculty, graduate students, and so on. And I was lucky enough to land a fantastic cast for that film: William Sadler, John Cullum, Colin Cunningham, Glennis O'Connor. And we made it. We made that film in 2013. And here we are in 2021, and 5 films later, Demigod is the 6th feature, and feeling, very grateful and proud indeed to be able to keep doing this thing that I love so much.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a cool journey that you took, primarily trying to become an actor or being an actor, but trying to find more work. And then you had that realization that, like, why am I waiting for permission when I could just open my own door?
Right. Yeah. And I think that's people ask me for advice about, where to go, what steps to take to be successful in this industry. And what does successful even mean? For me, it's about continuing to work. It's about being able to create. And I tell people, make your movie. If you've got $5 or $500,000 or $5 million, make your movie. The technology is at our fingertips now, right? You can shoot something of quality on an iPhone. If you have a compelling script and compelling performances and a vision, you're going to find an audience,
Yeah.
So that's my biggest piece of advice to burgeoning filmmakers is just make your movie. The thing that I found when I was in LA is, of course, and this is an old saw, everybody knows it, but everybody has a script. Whether they're working at a coffee shop or a restaurant or a bar or a gas station or in a law office, they've got a script. But very few people were actually making movies in LA. A lot of people talking about making movies. Very few people were actually making them. And, I came sort of back to my roots in the Southeast, and I saw these people actually making movies with whatever budget they were able to pull together. And I said, I'm just not going to wait around. I'm an incredibly impatient person anyway, but I just said, I'm not going to wait around anymore. I'm going to start doing my own thing. And I'm so glad that I did. I had a lot of champions at that time, including my wife, Lindsay Ann Williams, and my dear late friend, Mackenzie Westmoreland, and my father, who I don't think has ever truly understood my dream, but that hasn't stopped him from supporting it, who said, direct the damn thing yourself. I had not intended to direct The Historian. I was casting out to try to find directors and had a couple on the hook and in mind, and it just didn't work out. And there was a point in time there where I was like, man, is this the thing I'm supposed to be doing? Am I on the right path? And ultimately it ended up exactly as it was supposed to, with me directing that film. And boy, I'm really glad I did.
Yeah, it's really cool. Did you take any kind of formal education courses on directing, or is it just stuff you picked up along the way being on sets?
Well, I had directed theater, uh, and I had picked up a lot on set. Um, and even in my schooling at North Carolina School of the Arts, we had some television and film workshops. That film program at North Carolina was in its infancy at that time, but it turned out some pretty spectacular filmmakers like David Gordon Green and Craig Zobel and Danny McBride, and all those guys were there when I was there. So I got to act in some film students' films and learn the ropes a little bit. But I'll be the first to admit, when I set foot on set the first day of The Historian, I had a lot to learn, and I've really learned how to direct movies by doing. And I feel like every movie I get a little closer to knowing what I'm doing and precisely implementing the vision I had in mind before I started shooting. You know, maybe after two or three more, I'll make the one that I'm like, yeah, that's it. Probably not, but it's an aspiration.
That feels like one of those goals where no matter how good it feels when you watch it after, it's like, oh, I could do that different. Oh, I could do this. Oh, I picked up this trick.
Totally.
And I think that's part of the fun of the art.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's always emotionally challenging. Going back and watching my films, it's a bit of a roller coaster, right? Because you see the things that worked, and you're like, oh wow, that really worked. I'm really proud of how that turned out. And then, of course, you see all the stuff that you should have done differently, could have done differently if you had another day or two, or another $10,000, or what, or if you just thought about the problem in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I think it was Steven Spielberg who said, you never finish a film, you just abandon it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it is. It's never going to be perfect. And that's kind of the maddening and very cool thing about the art form.
Yeah. I kind of like that. Maybe just the way, we're wired, but I like that hunt too, where it's like, it's never done and it never feels like you did as good as you could have afterwards, mm-hmm. But that's also why you keep coming back.
Right.
Yeah. Right. I like that.
Keeps you motivated.
Right. And I'm sure you find, this kind of popped in my head when you were talking about the things you've seen that, oh, if only I did it this way. One, you're probably like the only guy who's seeing that. People watching the movie, they're watching the whole, so it's all coming together. But for you, you're picking out the little individual threads that maybe no one else is even noticing.
Yeah, I mean, that's the trick, right? You're trying to hide the strings, you're hiding the seams, right? And if you do that successfully, then you've achieved something. They're there. You know how hard it was to achieve a certain shot or to shoot a certain scene, but the audience doesn't.
Right.
And they don't care.
Right.
They just they just want to be engaged. They want to be moved. They want to be entertained. And hopefully you've succeeded in at least two of those three.
Right. Have you found conversely where there was something, you don't even have to mention specifically, but something that you've really pulled off and it came together, and in the final edit, you're like, man, like, I can't believe we overcame all this stuff and we got the shot and it's amazing. But for everyone else watching, they're like, well, yeah, that's how the shot should look.
I think that the sequence that comes to immediately to mind is the finale of The Hollow, my second film, which happens in the rain. And I was insistent that it had to happen in the rain. And everybody told me, don't do it. It's going to be expensive. It's going to be a nightmare. Your actors are going to hate you. We wound up pulling it off anyway. I love it. But of course, now, since Blade Runner and Ridley Scott, you see the rain gag a lot, right? And Seven. And I don't think anybody quite appreciates, or sort of the layman audience member quite appreciates, how hard it is to shoot a lengthy sequence in the rain, both for your cast and your crew, and trying to stage it and make it look right. And, make the rain look like it's all coming from the same direction. Those things are really hard to do. So I think probably that's the one that immediately pops in my head.
So much work, but for the audience, they're like, okay, it's raining.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, one thing with rain in movies that I always found fascinating, because everyone knows, oh, there's a rain machine. You're not just waiting for the perfect rain to hit.
Right.
You're sitting around for 6 months. I didn't
Right.
realize they actually manufacture or manipulate the rain in a way that the raindrops are like 5 times bigger than normal, so you can see them. Some weird stuff like
Yeah.
that going on.
Yeah. Well, we didn't have a Hollywood rain machine on my film. It was PVC pipe and a big water truck and garden sprayers and stuff. I mean, it was really tricked out, let me tell you, because we just couldn't afford it. We couldn't afford.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure.
But I mean,
Create rain.
it looks pretty good.
Yeah, that's cool.
Little ingenuity and everybody getting together and trying to deliver the vision, and it came off.
Is that something that you were involved in hands-on directly, or did you have I don't know what even the role would be on a set, but did you have somebody who's like, "Hey, we need a rain machine, figure it
Yeah,
out"?
the rainmakers. Well, everybody was involved in the rainmaking in that film. I mean, it was it was one of those things that if you're gonna make it rain for 7 to 10 minutes in a film on a film of that budget, everybody has to be involved. You know,
Yeah.
from the producers right on down to the PAs. So you know, our UPM is standing on top of the water truck, futzing with the PVC pipe and stuff like that. So yeah, everybody was involved. I was also in the sequence as an actor. And it was trying. It was a very long night, but we made it work. I also had VFX gags. There was squib work in it, and it was. I can't believe it worked as well as it did based on the budget we had.
And you said this was your second?
That was my second film. After that night, I said, "Oh, this is why everybody told me not to do this." Okay, I get it.
But you also added every possible layer to make it harder that you could think
Yeah,
of.
right. Including like all my name talent was in the sequence. So I had James Callis, Will Forsythe, Christian Seidel. So all my big actors were in the sequence, and I'm pouring water on them and the blood and gunfire and but they were troopers.
You got to go for the hard stuff early on,
Yeah.
otherwise it's going to build up and get intimidating.
Yeah, right.
On your third movie, you probably said, "Well, we don't have a 10-minute rain scene, so we're good."
Yeah. No, I'm like, comparatively speaking, this is going to be a cakewalk.
Right. Well, speaking of which, we should probably get to Demigod, your newest movie.
Mm-hmm.
You were interested in history and everything. Is that where the kind of lore behind this came from?
I'm always interested in mythology and religion and ritual and cult, and those things have been explored to some degree or another in all my films. Really, I mean, there's a bit of that stuff in everything. Some to a greater extent, like this film, like Demons, like The Dinner Party, Hallowed Ground, but the Cernunnos mythology, I think, is really fascinating, especially now that, you know, the with climate crisis and the weather the way it is, and you know, this idea that there's a deity that is the master of the natural world, of the beasts, of wild places, that somehow is tasked with governing the continuance of our existence or the environment that we live in, and the animal kingdom on this planet and our interactions with them. I just think it's a fascinating idea, and it's an idea that's not only limited to Cernunnos, but, you know, in the ancient world we have Demeter and other gods of the harvest and vegetation deities like Dionysus and all that kind of stuff. But the other thing about those deities is that they're often very, very old, because at the end of the day, you know, if you can't grow the crops, if the environment and nature doesn't cooperate, you're not going to last very long. So those are oftentimes the oldest, most chthonic deities, and so I think that yes, that mythology certainly piqued my interest. In the first draft that I received from my co-writer Michael Donovan Horn, the deity wasn't named. And I immediately said, okay, if we're going to be in Germany, maybe we pilfer a little bit from the Celts and the Gauls and sort of create, you know, Cernunnos is not precisely a German deity per se. He sort of has tentacles in a lot of different peoples in the late antique and medieval world. But I just thought he was the perfect choice, and so that had a lot to do with my interest in the story and the building of the story, and also something that I commonly deal with in my films is the nature of family and what is lineage and what is responsibility to family and generational trauma and those sorts of things. Families are so immensely complicated. And this is a story about a woman who's trying to make sense of who her family was and the promises they made and the identity that they formally embraced, and what is her role exactly in it, in that lineage, in that legacy, and then what does family mean anyway? I mean, it's not biological always. I mean, it can mean a lot of different things, and of course, we have in the course of the narrative the connection between our lead character, Robin, played by the wonderful Rachel Nichols, and Amalia, the young German girl played by Rachel Riles, that I just thought was incredibly fruitful. And something that I saw in the script early on in the early drafts of the script, Amalia was a boy and was older, and it just, to me, it didn't have as much power. And so when we made the character younger and female, I just thought the narrative kind of exploded, and Amalia became this kind of axial point around which a lot of the narrative revolved.
Yeah, never would have guessed that her character was originally older and male, because I thought she was kind of the perfect, not counter to your lead, but almost like a mirror or a parallel. I'm not even sure the right word there, but like it seemed so fitting for the two of them to be the same but totally opposite also.
Yeah, when that choice was made, the script really opened up. So I think you're exactly right. I'm glad you had that response, because when we made that decision, it really felt like a lot of other things in the narrative started to fall into place. Yeah. So it was the right call.
I also liked how you played with memory in it when you're talking about family and she's trying to figure out how she fits in with her family. Because without spoiling it for people because it's not out yet, but with in the beginning she's almost like detached, like I don't even know why we're doing this. But then she has these really specific memories and then almost visions, I guess they would be. So I kind of liked how it was this, because the human memory is really all over the place. It's not precise at all.
Right, absolutely. And we made the decision to let Rachel play those scenes as an adult, as she was now, and it's almost as if she's experiencing those moments, those very traumatic moments that had been seared into her psyche that she experienced as a child again. And some of that is, of course, like if you've got Rachel Nichols, you want her in as much of the movie as possible. But
yeah, for sure.
But at the same time, I think it really works because it felt the character was having a more visceral experience rather than just going to a flashback where you see her as a little girl and that she's actively reliving these experiences. I thought that was the right choice.
Yeah, I really liked how it worked because it kind of fit where she has the memory, of course, but it's also the memory through the eyes of as she is now, because now she needs those memories.
Yeah.
Like they're taking on a whole new meaning than just a weird memory that she had.
Right, precisely.
Yeah. So I thought you really nailed it there.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Sorry, the cats are.
I understand. I'm surprised my dogs aren't going bonkers in the background. I have a whole pack back there.
Yeah, usually my wife corrals them, but she's in the office today. Sorry. Yeah. So where was this shot? I'm guessing you didn't fly to Germany.
No, unfortunately, we didn't have that kind of budget to actually shoot in the Black Forest. This was a very location-dependent film. The last two films have been Dinner Party and this one. And my production company is based in Mississippi, and I've shot all of my films in Mississippi. So I didn't want this one to be an exception to that. And we looked all over the state for some kind of park or campground that would work, that could approximate the Black Forest. Fortunately, the Black Forest, like the Deep South, has a lot of evergreens. So we got a lot of pine trees and spruce trees down in the Deep South. And the other thing that was really important to us, given COVID, was to find somewhere that we could sort of sequester, that had lodging for our cast and crew. So we wound up shooting this at Little Black Creek Campground and Park, which is about 50 miles outside of Hattiesburg, Mississippi, which is the home base of my production company. And it just turned out to be ideal. There were enough cabins to house the entire cast and crew. When somebody had to leave set, we had these select PAs that we would send off site. But everybody else was there the entire time, the 3 weeks we were shooting the film, and we're testing for COVID several times a week. And we had one little scare where an actor flew in, didn't come to set, but our nurse practitioner literally met her before she got to set, tested her. She tested positive. We had to recast in the middle of the show. That was harrowing. We knew it was going to be a kind of occupational hazard on this one, but it in the end, it all turned out really well. The actors, we moved some actors around, bumped an actor in a smaller role up to a larger role, and she delivered famously. But yeah, that was the scariest thing really about this film is the location was absolutely critical. The whole film, I mean, the woods, the cabin, it had to look perfect. And so we were very fortunate to find that location, Little Black Creek.
Yeah, the woods looked great. It was super remote. At least it felt it. I mean, there could have been a highway right off camera for all I know, but it felt really secluded.
Yeah, the park itself is pretty secluded. There are a lot more cabins than obviously you see in the film. You only see the one, but
yeah, it was a cool cabin too.
But thank you very much. But it's a huge. The woods are huge, and there's so many places to play with, and then you of course have deep woods, and then you have ridges and lakes, ponds. So we had that ridge where we shot Carnunos coming over the ridge when he's chasing Leo. With a sunset shot, which was very important to us. So you just there's a lot of variety in the geography there. And yet, like you say, at the same time, it feels very remote.
How do you write something like that? Because you co-wrote this also and directed it. You probably had an idea in mind, at least the type of environment. I mean, obviously you knew woods, but being from Mississippi, you probably knew, the woods are like this. Do you write, there's a chase in the woods, and then when you get there, you have to kind of figure it out and feel it out? Okay, run to this tree, run behind this. Yeah. Oh, cool, we have a drain pipe. Let's use that.
Yeah. Well, like the big aluminum drain scene with Leo and Arthur. We just found that when we got there, and so
cool.
There were several sequences that we altered based on the location, and that always happens. I mean, it's very rare that you walk into a location and you're like, this is exactly what I wrote and everything is in its right place and we don't have to change anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we were just scouting the location. We found that drain pipe and we were like, oh man, that's great. We got to use that. And so we did. So yeah, sequences literally changed in the blocking and the choreography based on the location. Most of the time, I think for the better. Because sometimes you envision something in your head and you try to write it, then you get to the location and, nature is even better than you thought. The geography and the landscape is even better than you could have envisioned. I mean, to the extent that we liked the location so much that we just added some transitional stuff when we got there, like the stuff with Arthur on the creek, looking around and putting his mask on after he's been separated from Amali. And we just found that location. We didn't have a precise scene that we thought we could put there, but we thought, let's just shoot some transitional material just because this looks so great. And there's this craggy, scary tree there. And so the location really did right by us in that regard.
Yeah, and I like that you had the vision to do that. Like, we have this beautiful location. Let's add some stuff in so you can see it. Because it drives me insane in the day and age where you have 4K, 8K video. You have everyone has a 50, 60-inch TV in their living room. Like, it's not a big deal anymore. Mm-hmm. And then you watch a movie and you don't see the locations, even though you're shooting in these grand places.
Yeah.
So I did.
Well, we were also shooting anamorphic widescreen and we wanted vistas. We wanted it, we wanted it to feel vast, and hopefully we achieved that.
Yeah, for sure. Because this is one, when I get the screener link, it's always on my laptop, and I start it, and like as soon as the intro's over, I'm like, I'm not watching this on my laptop. So you do it on your, you save it on Vimeo to the Fire Stick. You watch it on your actual proper TV setup to do it properly, and it really paid off.
Awesome. That's a great compliment. I appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, I do have one question about the intro, and I wasn't sure. I kind of think I know the answer, but the copy I had no subtitles. Is that intentional?
No subtitles at all, or just in the intro?
Just well, not at all. But I figured the intro was all German, so
Yeah. No, it should have subtitles.
okay.
That's something I'll have to look into.
I kind of figured that was the case, but I was like, well, it is a like a press screener, so maybe they're you're still working on them or something.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it definitely should have subtitles. I'll have to check into that.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to make a complaint. It's just I found it interesting
No.
because when
Yeah.
it had the American characters and the German speaking characters, that I'm like, okay, no subtitles. I'm just as lost as the protagonist. I should be. But at
Hmm.
the beginning, when they were all German, I was like, I bet it's because this is a screener.
Yep. You are correct, sir. Should
Okay.
have subtitles.
All right. I get, you get the gist of it. You probably could have done it without dialogue and you kind of understand what's going on, but
Yeah.
it probably
Yeah.
would have filled in a little bit more.
Right. Right. I think that I've seen films. There's that wonderful sequence of the Michael Salazzo sequence in Godfather, which is where they're talking Italian Sicilian and there's no subtitles and it. But I just
Mhm.
felt like there was a lot of German in this, and we needed subtitles for the vast majority of an American audience.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think I was lost by any means. You kind of figure it out pretty quick what's going on. Like, what rituals in movies look like.
Right. 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 You have some measure of comparison. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Very cool. Well, why don't you tell people where they can find Demigod?
Yes, absolutely. So Demigod is releasing on October 15th in select theaters and on demand. You can pre-order it even now on iTunes. So I certainly encourage folks to do that. And you can follow me on Instagram at Miles_Doleac. I'm always posting something about the film and providing updates for the film. Being released by Gravitas Ventures. So you can follow Gravitas too. They post about the film at Gravitas Ventures, VENTURES, on Instagram. And I would just say I'm really excited about the scope of the theatrical release. Of course, it's large by indie standards, but it may not be in your local multiplex, but it will be available day and date on the usual pay-per streaming platforms like iTunes and Fandango Now and Amazon and those guys. So I would just encourage your audience to please try to watch it opening weekend if you can, whether that's in a theater. If you can safely watch it in a theater, absolutely go do so. It was meant to be watched and seen on a big screen, as you found out.
Yep.
But if not, please do check it out on the most convenient streaming platform for you.
Amazing. Well, Miles, thank you so much for taking the time to come on. Really appreciate it. That was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure, Adam.
I'd like to thank Miles one more time for coming on the show to talk to me all about Demigod. Congratulations to Miles. It was a great movie. I hope his release goes really well. It's very cool. It comes out tomorrow, October 15th. So you should definitely check it out. It's going to be theaters and VOD day and date. So check your local theaters. We should all be supporting theaters at this point to keep them alive so we have them for the future. If it's not playing in a theater near you, it's going to be on VOD everywhere. I saw a really high quality screener. I watched it on my big screen. I couldn't just do it on my little laptop. It looks great. The acting's great. I really had a good time with Demigod. Also, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Got a lot more new movie coverage, a lot more interviews. I still have a couple unboxings to edit, one to even do. So you're not going to want to miss out. Make sure to like and subscribe. Also, make sure you listen to So Wizard Podcast every single week wherever you get your podcasts. So Wizard Podcast can also be found on Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, you get multiple monthly bonus shows, which I think is up to 3 or 4, including video. It's a lot for just $1. SoWizardPodcast.com is your resource for reviews, recommendations, videos, merchandise, and more. We love hearing feedback, so drop us a note in the comments, leave us something on social media. All the accounts can be found after the show and in the show notes. And on a more personal note, I have an ongoing comedy comic series out. It's called Social Studies. It's a slice of life comedy comic. It follows people through the tumultuous high school experience. It's all done like a sitcom. Try to keep it light, try to keep it funny, but it does hit some of those dramatic moments because when you were in high school, everything felt monumental. Everything was either the best thing or the worst thing. This is the best thing to ever happen in your life. Your life is over. It's all there. It's all funny, and it's all done in the style of the 90s cartoons that we grew up on and love. You can find all of that and more at socialstudiescomic.com. Thanks.